Retro, are we ready to kick off the recording? Because I'll just go ahead and start as people are coming in. Okay, let's do it. Welcome everyone to today's Regenerative Finance Aligned Voter Committee meeting. So we are anticipating a name change across our constituent documents. So you'll see a reference to both Constitutional Voter Committee, CVC, and AVC used interchangeably. But officially, we're still under the Constitution, and CVC is the name. And we are obliged and excited to have the privilege of weekly subcommittee meetings that are part business and part vision exercise and community building. And so I'm very excited to just jump right in today to our subject. But just first, want to give a very special welcome to Space Exponential, who is officially now our second member, MKR holder of the Regenerative Finance CVC. As all of you probably, as I'm looking at who's coming in, all of you here know very well our trajectory of being created by MakerDAOs, which is a tokenized community, a decentralized network of regenerative finance and impact DAO projects. And yeah, so we were sort of one of the, I think there's really another CVC that's also been set up by a DAO, or sort of a decentralized group of stakeholders. And it's really, really exciting that we get to add space to our team and welcome her to the MakerDAO ecosystem and community. And she's getting her bearings and we'll be benefiting very soon from the incredible work that she's done in the space at Forefront, and just all of her own study and work and energy and vision and talent, that I think is just such an asset to Maker, and as well our mission here with regenerative finance, that we are refining with the help of everyone on this call. And of course, the aligned delegates, the constitutional delegates who have chosen to follow our CVC. And we're so excited for that. Frontier Research is here. Up Maker is here. Bona Publica is here. And we have two others, I believe, that I don't. PBG is here, and we've got one more who I don't see yet, a true name. So with that, maybe we'll save 5 minutes at the end, and uncover any business. And if you want to say something as well, we'll leave about 5 minutes at the end for kind of concluding session. But I want to hand over the call really to Pavel, who has been a contributor at Maker for quite some time. And in the chat, if you were with us live, make sure that you're opening up the chat box. There's just a little balloon inside the voice channel. And I've linked the forum post about this call. And this is a place where we can chat and ask questions throughout the call. And hey. So just to set the table a little bit, each week we, as a part of our governance responsibilities, cover a particular scope in the Maker Constitution. And this week, the focus is on the ecosystem scope. And I think we're really starting to get a flow as a CVC. I'll be interested in anyone's thoughts about this, but there's become a nice kind of loop or feedback from some things we talk about on our calls that are very big picture. Some of the more detailed conversations that are happening on the forum. We're seeing our delegates, take things that you've heard us say on this call or comments and kind of make links for what we might want to think about as a CVC and our policy. And so, this meeting kind of came out, or the subject and the idea of inviting Pavel onto this call, it came about because, yeah, ecosystem, AI, the new version of the ecosystem scope lays out the beginnings of the framework around, how MakerDAO is going to be really embracing all the things AI. Uh, but then this is beginning to crop up absolutely everywhere. It's coming up in the discussion about AML. It's coming up in conversations about really the facilitator DAOs and how they're going to protect their anonymity, education, um, the purpose fund, obviously. So, that's that we've seen the post from Rune proposing that, what's initially in the Constitution as kind of an allocation of MKR to give away to charity. There's a kind of bigger and I think really incredibly exciting idea that, in fact, the purpose fund is dedicated to building open source AI capabilities that then, whomever we might have wanted to give money to, or any kind of philanthropic actor says, okay, we want to do good in the world, so here we're going to give this charity X amount of dollars or what have you. My understanding of where we might go with the Purpose Fund is that by building the AI capability that would be open source and free to compete with what private industry is doing and can do, is how we get the charities or the impact or the regenerative practitioners the resources to level up and compete. So, they can go to these resources that MakerDAO is developing as part of its public good mission, and get the answers, or, I don't know. I'm going to stop talking now because now is definitely where I hit the wall of knowing what in the world I'm talking about. And but I just sort of wanted to say a little bit about, why we wanted to have this conversation on the week of ecosystem about kind of AI. And Pavel, I'll just say this and then I'm gonna hand the mic to you. You put forward a really interesting conversation starter some time ago, and it evolved, which I'll let you speak to. And then you've had a stint as a recognized delegate at Maker, so you stood out to us at MakerDAOs as like really having a unique perspective, and you have a very specific background. So we'd love to hear about your specific background in the field, a little bit about, sort of what you introduced to Maker over a year ago, and, maybe some of your perspectives on the themes that are being discussed today for Endgame. And then, want to hear from everyone in the room and just, have a little bit of a dialogue. How does that sound?
Sure, sounds awesome. Um, so I just want to show you a couple of slides, if it goes well. Okay, I'm guessing it's sort of processing stuff. I'm not sure whether it will be possible because it's giving me some messages. Okay, I guess there won't be any slides in that case, because there is some some limitations on the part of Discord. So anyway, I wanted to first of all thank you for having me here, and that's definitely the broadest possible topic to discuss, and one of the most crucial for MakerDAO and DeFi and Web3 at large. I wanted to talk about some high-level issues today, not technical, because it's just impossible to cover all details over this conversation. So, first of all, I wanted to start with this notion. I actually had a nice slide with a sort of core principle and well thesis that I'm gonna explain later. And that's not my formulation, but I quite like it. It goes like this: you are not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. So basically, the idea is that MakerDAO, as any DeFi DAO, is a complex adaptive system. That means that it's both exposed to a number of actually a pretty long list of other systems and factors influencing it, and it also influences back the system it's exposed to. Okay, so retro is offering to. Okay, I think it's gonna be too complicated. I'll just talk it through, I guess, without slides. Not to waste time. And so again, MakerDAO is operating in the highly entangled environment of DeFi, which both influences it and being influenced by MakerDAO. It's also exposed to the financial industry at large and the broader global economy, and it's operating at the intersection of emergent technical, financial, operational, in terms of in the domain of decentralized workforce in particular, multi-jurisdiction regulatory issues, just to name a few. And basically, to try to control all these issues is just a dead end in my view, and instead we should not be aiming to strictly design the governance system itself. So the general approach should be sort of hinting the system towards anticipated outcomes from an array of existing interrelated systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And one of the primary tools, in my view, to tackle this emergent complexity, because honestly, MakerDAO is, well, to put it mildly, kind of kind of drowning in emergent complexity with all kinds of scopes and all work carried out by decentralized workforce. And so artificial intelligence is one of the major tools which could be employed to tackle this emergent complexity. I'll give you a quote from none other than Demis Hassabis, who's a co-founder and CEO of DeepMind, a company. It's now part of Google, and this company is known as the author of AlphaGo, the model which sort of won the Go game, the game of Go, and also AlphaFold, which solved the problem of folding proteins. So it's one of the primary AI powerhouses in the world, to put it simply. And the quote goes as following. When Shane Legg and I launched DeepMind back in 2010, many people thought general AI was a far-fetched science fiction technology that was decades away from being a reality. Now we live in a time in which AI research and technology is advancing exponentially. In the coming years, AI and ultimately AGI, that is artificial general intelligence, has the potential to drive one of the greatest social, economic, and scientific transformations in history. That was said just a couple of weeks ago on April 10th, when they announced sort of merger of forces inside Google between DeepMind and Google Brain, also another part of Google working on artificial intelligence. And in my opinion, I'm giving you this quote because in my opinion, MakerDAO should aim high. Specifically, it should aim at general artificial intelligence. So the distinction between narrow and general artificial intelligence is, well, it's debatable. It's a subject of academic debate, but for all practical purposes, let's say that a necessary property of a system with general intelligence capabilities will be to perform work on command, that is, respond with tolerable latency to dynamic changes in goal specification and environmental conditions, scale to real-world concerns, respect safety constraints, and be explainable and auditable. So basically, the problem with while acknowledging enormous capabilities, enormous value in deep learning models like like GPT-4 or ChatGPT based on GPT LLM models. Basically, the problem of such models is that they are not flexible enough. People, including OpenAI, who make GPT-X models, train it one time, and then they use and other people use it, then freeze it, its weight values, and you use it the way it is. So it's not capable to relearn on the go, to relearn from emergent data and from emergent experience, and to discover on the fly new patterns and new approaches to the task. On top of that, so that's the problem of work on command. It's incapable to respond to dynamic changes in goal specification. And on top of that, it pretty much works as a black box. So there are different approaches to understanding it, and well, it's still work in progress, but basically it's a black box. So it's hard to explain and audit why it outputs this word, this phrase, this paragraph, and not the other one. And also safety constraints, because if you wanna give the agent explicitly what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, that's beyond the capabilities of such models. And, and actually, it's crucial for applications like applications for MakerDAO. So that's where more advanced approaches should come in place, and basically what people at places like DeepMind, but obviously not limited to DeepMind, are working on is integrating a bunch of so you train you come up with architecture, you come up with a data set on which you have to train your model, and then you have a model. Then you can tune it for downstream tasks like a chat, right? Like a chatbot or sentiment analysis or translation or whatever you want to do, or a co-pilot for a developer like GitHub Copilot. There is this marvelous application for large language models when you when it generates part of the code and you are sort of interacting with the model when developing your software. So you have this large language model or any other model, and then you sort of come up with a framework which combines different kinds of models into a, let's say, supermodel, which is a constant learner of the environment around it and of the task that well, it's designed to solve with a bunch of limitations. So there is an architecture for compositionality. You can you can combine different components, like different models, to
Oh,
build a necessary tool. Yeah, you wanted to.
I just wanted to interject a little bit, and ask you, not to cut you off in mid-sentence, but I'm getting a little bit lost in probably the practicalities. I think you're covering, a little bit of the implementation of how we should think about, how
Okay,
we community of approaching, but I'd also like if you could zoom out a little bit and, um, I guess
sure.
set give a little bit more of the, descriptive, non the technical description of maybe what we would need to do or accomplish. But for example, some of the things that were in the discussions on the forum about, um,
Yeah.
the
Basically, my
yeah, yeah.
line of thought was the following: to create kind of AI platform for a MakerDAO, you need a bunch of components which would be handling a bunch of tasks in place for MakerDAO as a multifaceted endeavor. Specifically, large language model as one part of this platform, and
Oh, could you even Pavel, could you even
the
explain what I mean, this is how basic I want you to get for us. Like, what is
sure.
a LLM? Like, what do we mean when we say AI? Like, even if you could just start with some defined terms, like, what are these terms we're talking about?
Okay,
Give us a little bit of a sense.
large language model.
Yeah.
Sure. So
Yeah.
large language model, you can think of it as a representation of language. Uh, it's thought of a general purpose representation of language. So you have a huge amount of uh, data crawled from all around internet, basically. So you include here all websites, Wikipedia, text documents, anything that you could reach. And then there is this architecture called transformers. Doesn't matter for now how it goes, but basically you uh, you train your model with 170 billion parameters, and parameter is just a real number. You feed this model all this huge amount of text data, and as an output, you have a bunch of numbers. Right, specifically this 100 and something billion numbers, which serve as a representation of English language, for instance. And then you can fine tune it. Uh, so you maybe add a bit more of these numbers, or you change some of them such that it was capable of handling specific tasks. For instance, talking to you or translating your text, or do whatever language work you want. And one of my basic proposals was that at the moment there are general purpose language models like GPT-4. but the task, so if you want to increase the accuracy of this model with specific tasks, you have to teach it specific context. And DeFi and Web3 and Maker have a specific language context. It has specific slang. It has history of debates and whatnot. And if you assemble a data set from all sorts of debates on Discord and forum and Twitter, and then you tune this general purpose language model on this DeFi maker focused data set, then you teach it to understand the context, and then you can do all sorts of stuff, for instance, like sentiment analysis or scope framework generation about MakerDAO and DeFi problems. That's basically the approach to applying LLMs to MakerDAO needs. Does it make sense?
Yes, in a way. Am I the only
Basi-
person who's very nervous in
yeah,
this?
so,
Look at in the chat. There's also some. We're getting there. Haha.
okay,
There's,
I'll have a look
yeah.
at the
See,
chat.
so Vidu Boop Bop says, "Man, so we're in the C++ era. Nice, we early." So I kind of know C++. I think that's a reference to coding language. And then Kermit's saying GPT-4 is like your Commodore computer. So, that doesn't help me a lot, although I I know that was an early form of computer, so I get that reference. Um, but yeah, I mean, anyone else who wants to come off the mic and speak, and no, Tim, I haven't used Chat GPT yet. Um, so no. But I get it. Like, I mean, I'm following. I think, also why I gave glad to see Mike here, because been a lot of discussion in the refi and impact space. I don't know if it's a lot, relatively speaking, but I just thought it was really interesting, some of the work Mike's doing, um, and other snippets of conversation, that it seems like a natural community that's seeing the potential, where this new form of, and again, I'm not going to have the right words. I can say AI all day long, but I know I need to like improve the specificity of what I'm saying, and whether it's LLMs or stuff that you just said, Pavel. But it felt that, this is an area, and Frontier Research, pointed this out, that the regenerative finance policy of MakerDAO that we are at the
Yeah,
moment stewards of
so
can really,
the
well, like, let me just finish the point, which is just that uniquely the refi community, the people who are in Web3 and blockchain, that are very, very focused on impact, have identified the potential for all the things that you're describing, Pavel, to be significant, and are clearly like kind of studying this. So we're in this CVC, feeling, obliged and excited that we can, we can have an expertise, or we can invite people into this conversation who are outside of Maker, to really help us here. And so, um, I don't know, certainly Mike, if there's anything that you want to say or questions as we go along. I know Peyton also, I wanted to point out his comment in the chat, Pavel, about what excites you in terms of tasks for Maker, and anything in particular about the end game. And so, we've got all of these areas. We're supposed to be coming up with recommendations for the scopes. I think there's an idea that in a future state, these language models that you described can actually give us text, can once trained inform us about edge case scenarios. You'd even talked about a project that was maybe like across different protocols to educate around sentiment analysis, and just any of the like specific applications that you see, that excite you for what Maker could utilize.
Okay, that's a pretty deep and long topic. First of all, for
Just throwing
as
it out
for
there.
the as for the way to think about all this stuff, so AI is a field of research, nothing more, nothing less. And there are a bunch of approaches to building artificial intelligence, and machine learning is one of them, and deep learning is a specific kind of machine learning. And then you have large language models, which is a particular type of model developed within the deep learning approach. That's the way to think about it. Now, as for questions, so Pros asked about what excites me about applications of AI within MakerDAO. My main way of thinking about this is that MakerDAO has to move up the ladder of automation. As I said at the beginning, there is just way too much complexity, emergent complexity, and for instance, stuff like risk parameters could be generated by such models. I'm not saying it should be purely LLM. I think that data from transactions should be taken into account as well, and that will be not a language model. But if we combine, what I'm really excited is to take different perspectives of the environment that MakerDAO is operating in. On the one hand, it's a financial infrastructure, so we can learn patterns from data on transactions. On the other hand, we're operating within sort of society, and there is a lot of emotional, irrational data narratives that is represented on social media, and this kind of stuff could be gauged with large language models. And if we combine these different perspectives on MakerDAO's operations, we could come up with a sort of 3D view of what's going on and generate better and actually more accurate parameters for MakerDAO, be it risk parameters or other governance parameters. That's for sure one of the most exciting opportunities here. Yeah.
Oh, okay, looks like Bona Publica two-part question in the chat. Would it be possible to apply reinforcement learning as where the AI learns by interacting with its environment and receiving feedback in the form of rewards or penalties? How can improved learning help develop and emphasize sustainable and inclusive financial practices that support social equity regeneration?
So as for reinforcement learning, the the major approach and problem that you need a reward function. So how do you give out rewards and penalties? And this reward function is basically devised by the developer. And that's well, quite an immense task to come up. So it's a deep academic field of constructing these reward functions. But basically, if we're talking about such complex environment as MakerDAO is operating in, basically one thing, if you are trying to train a robot which is operating in a limited environment and is tackling limited set of tasks, and completely different situation when MakerDAO is operating in the environment with the enormous number of factors. So a reward function would be quite difficult task to tackle here. That's my understanding of the problem of reinforcement learning in this context.
I just put a comment in the chat. You know, certainly this is also a call where if any of you have thoughts about AI in general, just independently, and want to share that would certainly be welcome. Whether you're a delegate following or not, you know, we want to foster on these calls, you know, a sense of, you know, open, free-flowing conversation, not just the very strict business of Maker. So I'd had a question about what does it look like to sort of train an AI, or whichever category we're talking about. Just this broad idea that I know I've had, which is all of this governance, all of these scopes, they can be made legible because somehow like AI can ingest and read everything, and then we can just ask the AI some simple questions, and we're not actually going to need all the humans on this call to have a kind of understanding or knowledge of all of the volume of text. And so wonder if you have some comments about just at a kind of functional level, where does the organization begin, and what does that look like to set up the research plus actually producing something that's usable, that can actually know more about Maker than any of the people involved. And then also, you know, Frontier Research and Bona Publica are also in the chat with more.
So in my opinion, it's actually quite good question, An excellent question. What should be first steps? Um, there are already at least a couple of GPT-3 at least level of open large language models. The first one is Bloom by this organization called Hugging Face. It's been trained about a year ago, maybe less. The second one is trained by Stability AI, and well, they are releasing a set of LLMs as we are speaking, and the first natural step might be to use these open models already available and to tune them. So to build MakerDAO focused text data set from all documents and conversations on DeFi and Maker available, and then use this data set to tune these open models to teach them to understand Maker context, and then use this fine-tuned model for purposes like scope framework generation and sentiment analysis. Well, you name it. In my opinion, that could be the first step, because coming up with some complicated architectures would take both more time and resources. So that could be a relatively cheap and easy first step.
So, Kermit, can I just call you Kermit? um, starts with the CAIS build out. I forget what that acronym stands for. But maybe I could impose upon you, if you want to come off of the mic, to describe for us on the call your understanding of what's just been put in the scope. So, like today, or I guess as of yesterday, the ecosystem framework has been updated. So for the last 10 minutes or so of the call, we'll just start to pivot a little bit to talking a little bit more specifics around policy and some of the work that this group will be doing over the quarter of developing a policy view around each of the scopes. Any appetite to come off mic, Kermit, BD Boop Bop, and say a few words about what the scopes now say about the core artificial intelligence system? Are you able to share? Or anyone else who's read and feels knowledgeable, or maybe Retro, I could put you on the spot. if you anyone want to give us just
Does
a
my
little.
microphone work? No.
Yeah, gotcha.
Oh, it does.
Thank you.
Oh, Kermit the Frog here.
What's in place now as of yesterday regarding
Yeah, so the budget has been
EAIS?
approved. Yeah, it's been approved for the case CAIS, the Core Artificial Intelligence System, which is hopefully build out of high power artificial intelligence model similar to what Pavel is speaking about today, which is going to operate in a remote data center, from what I understand it. So I'm not sure what that means, but there's a lot of more work left to be done. But the budget has been approved. I think it's for $3 million, which most of it doesn't kick in. Actually, it's $5 million, but I think the first 1.5 million doesn't kick in into the smart engine burns at least 20 million die, if I recall correctly. So 1.5 million to kick things off. I would imagine this is something that could either be in, as Pablo said, the ChatGPT GPT-4 language, or it could be something different that maybe Google is working on. I can't remember the name of the Google one. So it could be any of these languages that can be used by Maker. It could also be something that you and I have never heard of as of today. So it's super exciting to get this going. I know there are some people here who are a bit hesitant when it comes to using artificial intelligence and machine learning for running any of the scopes or even parameters, for risk parameters for the protocol. But yes, Google Bard, that's it. So that's to be determined. That's all I can tell you about it. I mean, it's kind of early, right? That's why I kind of wrote that little comment there. So I think together we could all learn all about this, right? Because myself, I'm just learning, and it's super exciting stuff. But
so the $4 million budget, and I have read it, but as I sit here, I don't feel that I have a sense of how specific in terms of taking action the language is right now in the scope of sort of who's taking what action and how from a CVC perspective or governor's perspective, what's next, right? Like, what parts should we be thinking about? Should we be learning about how does an organization allocate a budget like that? Decide, I recall that there's some specific language around, there's some interaction there with the DAO toolkit. I mean, does anyone on the call just have a sense of where this stuff is kind of landing? I mean, I get the big picture, but then I immediately struggle to know sort of what's next, who's taking action and how, and how is governance meant to have oversight around the sequencing or the prioritization. And then I guess here's another area for our advisory council, perhaps, which is how do we know, based on some outcome we want to see, like which approach, which technologies, in which order of things MakerDAO ought to be proceeding. Does anyone have any thoughts as to what the CVCs in general ought to be thinking about, where this the AI implementation and the scopes, the progression of the scopes is concerned? Because I mean, to sort of in the chat, the summary description of what it is still like incredibly far away from something existing that today doesn't exist at all, right? Like, kind of, what are the first things, or what are the things that people are doing? Like, are there things that people in the organization are already doing to implement this? Or do we just have the language and the scopes, and now we've got to take the next step?
Yeah, I would imagine the author of this edit the MIP 102 sub-proposal that just passed. They've probably been researching it, talking to a few folks, I would imagine, and eventually, because at 1.5, I was just reading it actually, and I know Frontier Research just put some of the language there, and I was looking at it myself, and it's the 1.5 million is actually just a bootstrapping phase, right? So that might not even get us much as a community to get the case off the ground. Maybe, hopefully, will, but I would imagine, again, the author, to answer your question, Kianga, I would imagine they're doing research into this. For all we know, they could be talking to Pavel. That would be cool. And others, right? So let's see what comes out of it. But I think since it just passed on,
Yeah.
what was it, yeah, right. So it's kind of early, but hopefully we'll get that going soon.
Well, there's just so much to digest here. I know we're coming up to time, so I wanted to invite space if you wanted to say anything at all. No pressure. I don't know if you're in a place where you can speak, but definitely wanted to give you the floor specifically if you'd like before we wrap up. Yeah, I hope. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, my friend. Finish what you're saying.
No. I just didn't want to put any pressure on you, but love to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kian. I just want to say a quick hi to everyone. Thank you to Pavel for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for the great input and the questions. I, for one, super appreciative of going back to basics and the fundamentals, Kianga. So appreciate you stewarding the conversation in that direction. So again, just a quick hi, and maybe a little bit about my background. Kianga mentioned that I've been most recently with the Forefront DAO. This is where I met Kianga and kicked off our beautiful relationship. And I just want to say thank you, Kianga, for extending this opportunity, this invitation to be a part of the CVC. I've been working in the Web3 DAO space for the past few years. I would say a really deep, abiding concern in my life has been reimagining socioeconomic architectures, money first and foremost. So regeneration is very near and dear to my heart. And actually this conversation today, even though I feel quite lost, I'm very interested in AI. I have definitely played around with ChatGPT, but still quite feel in over my head. But I think it really all just comes back to this question of alignment and alignment engineering, or so how it's put in the MakerDAO Constitution. This really daunting challenge that we face as what I like to describe as epistemic socio-technical systems. Or maybe say ecologies, as there are human and non-human agents interacting in DAOs. And this entire process of producing, disseminating, evaluating epistemic artifacts, knowledge in its various forms, which can then be implemented in various practical ways. How do we realize this? How do we really put into practice this future of human coordination and collaboration? And I really found compelling what you were saying, Pavel. You're characterizing MakerDAO, or the DAO ecosystem as a whole, as sort of drowning in emergent complexity. And so these are some of the themes that I've been just nerding out on. I feel very enthusiastic about continuing this conversation with you and the rest of this community. So thank you, Kianga.
Well, we are 1 minute to conclusion. Pavel, thank you. Pavel, I want to say
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Yeah.
for talking with us and just helping us have a beginning of a better understanding. I hope that this has been of some use for everyone here. We'll have a recording, and yeah, I feel massively overwhelmed and intimidated, which takes some doing. I'm not usually so lost for words, but I'm excited by the challenge. So Thanks all. We'll continue it on the forums, async. We have a refi dedicated channel in the Discord. Drop in anytime. And I hope everyone has a terrific rest of your week. Good morning, good night, and good day.